Welcome back. I am Representative Dehart, and we are Coffee in Congress, the podcast where we caffeinate the future of congressional debaters weekly. And by weekly, we really mean monthly, and by monthly, it might as well be yearly by now. It's a work in progress. Regardless of our questionable upload schedule, we are kicking off what we hope to be an amazing event. Let me welcome you to the Questioning Block, the series where we have a metaphorical cup of joe with the state's best congressional debaters and pick their brains to explore competition, culture, and what makes them so great. So let's welcome our guest today.
Hey, I am Jackson, better known as Representative Juel. I am a senior here at Hayes High School, and I'm really looking forward to today's event.
Yeah, so let's start us off real quick. How do you take your coffee?
So, coffee for me is actually something I try to avoid drinking at all cost, just because caffeine is something that I am not a big fan of. But sometimes I need a little pick-me-up, and when I do need that, typically I don't like any type of sugar or creamer in my coffee. That's my way of making it a little bit healthier for me than the caffeine already is. Like, it's still not great for you, but without all of the coffee sweeteners and sugars, it makes it just a little bit better. So when I really need to pick me up, I just prefer a nice cup of coffee on its own.
I'm like completely the opposite. If I have coffee, I need to have everything in it. Otherwise, it's like, ew, why am I even drinking
Yeah,
this?
but then I feel like I'm going to be a diabetic by age 25, so...
Yeah, that's a good point. So, what drew you to congressional debate and what made you stay?
So, congressional debate and me was actually a bit of a happy accident. So, my sophomore year of high school, we had a bunch of drops going to the Lavernia High School tournament, and they needed someone to fill those drops. And I just so happened to be around, and so my coach, shout out to Miss Lozano, goes and plugs me into congressional debate. And the rest is pretty much history from that point. I found out the congressional debate was not nearly as terrible as everyone says it was. It's still terrible, but it's not as bad as everyone thinks it is.
Lavernia is always like such a good tournament to like get into different events. It's like where I do all of the random events I never do.
I really, really do love the Lavernia tournament. But as far as what made me stay in Congress, I like the fact that it's a unique blend of all of the other events, right? It's a debate event, but it's also heavy in the speech aspects, and I think that's a really, really interesting blend. But I also stayed for the people, right? Congress has 15 people rounds, and it's really great to get to know everybody in those rounds, and that social aspect is really, really cool.
Definitely. I think I have more friends on the circuit than I do at my own school. So, what are some notable achievements that you've achieved?
So I was never great at Congress, but I was good at Congress. I qualified to TFA state, to UIL state. I qualified to nationals. So I've been to pretty much every single big tournament on the circuit, and that qualification process varies widely. They can be easy, they can be not so easy, but I've been to tournaments at the local, state, and national level and done okay at all of them, so yeah.
What's your like favorite out of those three, like local, state, or national?
I've always been a big fan of state. National feels just a little bit too big for me. I've never really been a fan of just, there's so many different types of Congress. You have so many people from so many different areas that it feels a little bit disjointed. It feels a little bit overwhelming. And so I've always just been more of a fan of the state level where you have really, really good competition, but the focus of the event of Congress is still, controlled enough to create a good environment.
It's always so great to see all of the people you've competed with that year at one place.
That's the other really nice thing about state is that a lot of people don't compete the national circuit. And so to be able to see all the people that you're competing with the entire year at one tournament is really nice.
Yeah. So, what do you think is more important as a competitor, content or performance?
So, as a competitor, my big emphasis is that congressional debate is a debate event. It's in the name. And so because of that, I think content is the most important aspect of any debate event, and that isn't an exception for Congress. I think having good arguments, good refutation, understanding the flow of the round are all the most important aspects of the event. With that being said, Congress is a unique blend of debate and speech. Speech is still very, very important in Congress, just not quite as important as content. If I were to put percentages to it, I'd say it's about 60% in favor of the debate aspect or the content aspect, and about 40% in favor of the speech aspect.
Do you think your fellow competitors share your view?
Um, I don't really know. I haven't actually discussed this with a lot of them. That's just my personal take on Congress. But there's a difference between what I think is most important in Congress and what's judged as most important in Congress,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Some judges, because they're interim judges, might think performance and speech is the end all be all of Congress. That's all the event is about. Some hardcore debate judges probably wouldn't care if you spread in a Congress round as long as what you're saying is good.
Please don't bring spreading to Congress. I don't think I could deal with progressive congressional debate. I think I would die. But so something that we see sometimes in Congress rounds, but not a lot, is LARPing. What are your thoughts on LARPing?
Man, so all of the wannabe role players in Congress, I have very mixed feelings about them. To a certain extent, I do respect the dedication to the bit, but at the same time, sometimes you have to understand it is not that deep. Like there's a difference between being respectful, creating a good debate environment, and then just trying to role play in the middle of the round, right? Like do not make it weird is my benchmark for if you should be LARPing or not. Like you can role play in Congress without making the round uncomfortable and weird. When you go to that point, then you've taken it just a bit too far.
Yeah, like, this, I hear the same AGDs every time someone's like LARPing. It's always, I got a letter from my people, I did this for my people, blah, 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 blah. And I think if you're the only one doing that in a round, it gets kind of iffy.
Yeah, I think that you need to focus more on the debate aspect of the event and less on the role playing aspect of the event if you're doing that.
So that's already one challenge we see Congress face, but what is like the biggest challenge you think that this event faces?
The biggest challenge I think this event faces is probably the way competitors view speeches, and let me explain on that. So rehash I think is by far the biggest problem that this event has, because there are a bunch of people in rounds, even at state, who will go up and say the exact same thing that someone else just said. And I think that's a byproduct of everyone thinking they need to give a speech on every single item. And I get that you want to give as many speeches as possible because while Congress judges always say the quality of your speech is more important than the quantity of your speech, there are some judges out there that are lying when they say that. They definitely weigh quantity of speeches. But with that being said, I don't think that's healthy for the event. I think that it's all about presenting unique ideas, unique arguments in the round. And I think that when everyone's trying to give a speech on every single item, you lose a lot of that because people feel the need to continue the ongoing debate. People can't come up with new and unique arguments for the round. There can be a bunch of different reasons why at your 14th speech in the round, it feels like your fourth speech in the round.
Yeah.
But it's just that everyone thinking they need to give a speech on every single item is a little much. Maybe spread out the speeches so you're having like 7 to 9 speeches, maybe even 10 speeches per item. But, keep the debate fresh, I think, is the goal of changing it to something like that. And I think that that's the biggest problem that the event has right now.
I mean, I think we can especially see that when we look at preset dockets and there being 5 things on the docket and going into that tournament going, yeah, we're only going to get through like the first 2 on the docket.
Yeah, I think that can especially be an issue when everyone feels the need to give a speech on an item that because of the preset docket they have to debate but nobody likes. I can think of multiple bills that everybody hates but at the same time everyone is speaking on because they just think they need to give a speech on every single item. And I don't think that is good for the event, and I don't necessarily think that's true a lot of the time. I think that when you get certain judges that can become an issue, but I genuinely just do think that if you don't have something unique to contribute to that item, you need to save your precedence in your speech for the next item.
Yeah. So, is this a judge problem or a competitor problem?
Uh, I don't think it's fair to pin it on either group completely. I
Okay.
think that there's a problem with some judges who don't really understand the event of Congress, who don't understand that it's all about providing unique perspectives, that rehash shouldn't be rewarded, that I do think that there are certain judging problems, but at the same time, I also think it's a competitive problem for that has now become the norm. So you're kind of in a vicious cycle at this point where competitors, right, are giving a speech on every single item. And so judges, as a result of that, their judging practices and opinions are shaped by what the competitors tend to do.
Yeah.
So I think we're in a vicious cycle at this point where the judges judge expecting everyone to give a speech on every item, and the competitors fulfill that desire because they think it's going to help them place better. But I also think that because you're stuck in that cycle, it's making the event worse across the board.
You personally, how do you approach writing speeches and prepping just in general?
So, prepping for events, I'm an extemporer first and foremost. Let me just put that out there. So, prepping for events has never exactly been my strong suit. Um, I actually do not do the typical strategy in Congress. I do not really like speaking early in the round that much. I prefer to give crystals, impact waves, maybe a half ref every now and again. But because of that, my prep tends to look a lot more like getting evidence for the topic and for the item compared to writing speeches for that item because I typically don't like to give early round speeches unless I have a really good reason to. Like someone didn't frame the debate right or there's an important issue that's being left out. Then I might consider giving an early round speech. But if I don't have to for the health of the debate, I don't really like to.
So, that might be one thing that sets you apart, but what do you think sets you apart in your rounds?
So, being a late round speaker in rounds can go one of two ways for people. It's very, very polarizing. People are either very, very good in the late round or very, very bad in the late round. There typically aren't people who are just okay at it. And I think that for me as a speaker, my strength has always been I've been great as a late round speaker being able to summarize the round into three key ideas and either do an impact way off of them or do a crystal off of them. Really, really getting into either why some of these points have some issues or are flawed, or getting into the fact of even if these points are true, the other side still outweighs. I think that's always been my strength in Congress, and I think that that's what sets me apart in the event as I've done it, just because I've tended to be able to do that fairly well.
Yeah, we know what we're in for when you go up there and you start off your speech with, "We've seen a lot of good debate today, but let me boil it down to three main points."
I So the intro to those speeches are a little rough. I'm not great at coming up with AGDs on the spot, so they tend to all kind of sound the same in the beginning, but I promise they sound different once you actually get into them.
Sure, we believe you here. How has your team shaped your growth as a debater?
So my team as a debate kid has really, really shaped me from pretty much the end of my sophomore year going into the beginning of my junior year. The end of my sophomore year was when I had already been doing Congress for a little bit. I kind of understood the event. And then I had upperclassmen come in and really help me learn the basics of the event. Learn when to stand up to give a speech, how to play the game that is precedence, back when preset precedence wasn't a thing. God, I sound old saying that. But they really taught me the basics. And then we had debate camp over the summer where we brought in two people who really taught me a lot of what I know about Congress. Daniel Gardner and John Taft, shout out to those two. They really taught me a lot of the things that are more advanced that I know about Congress today. So that's the differences between speech types, when to give certain speeches, how to really take each type of speech to the next level, stuff like that really shaped me as a debate kid, and I'm really, really thankful for that.
How do you feel you've shaped your team?
So, as a competitor, my biggest thing for Congress has always been there is always something you can improve upon, right? Even if the judge is terrible, they give you bad feedback, there's always something to improve upon. And so the thing that I have hoped that I have imparted upon the team is that there is always something that you can improve on as a debater. And so for Congress in particular, I think that because there were so many different moving parts to the event, you have good cross-examination, right? How aggressive should you be in questioning? You have the different types of speeches you can give. How good are you at each individual type of speech? Are you playing your speeches well in the context of the round? There are so many different moving parts that I feel like the thing that I hope that I have impacted my team on is kind of providing them that perspective of there is no one thing you can focus on in Congress that will make you amazing at the event. You kind of have to be good at everything and then pick something to specialize in.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. What is an overrated strategy or phrase you see? Like for me personally, it's during questioning when people are all like, "Are you aware, representative?" Or I don't even know. Just like the constant, it says this in the TFA Constitution. It kind of makes me a bit crazy.
So the most overrated strategy for me are the people who try and stand up and give constructives at the beginning of every single round. And I understand what they're going for. If I stand up and give a speech first, my opponents can't steal the arguments that I've prepared. But there are some really, really big issues with that. First of all, Congress is a debate event, which means you need to be clashing. And if you're only giving constructives, you're not really clashing outside of cross-examination. And I just don't think that's a very good strategy. The other thing is that because preset precedents exist, you're not going to be able to do that every single time. You're just not. And so I think that the people who try and crutch on that strategy and think that that is just the way that they do Congress suffer a lot. The reality is that there is no one way to do Congress. There are so many different things that can happen in a round that you need to be proficient at giving a speech at any point in the round to be really good.
Yeah, one of the things I observed specifically at state was being in a round and everyone talking in like their Congress voices just normally to each other. I thought that was like really interesting to see. Do you have a Congress voice?
I would like to say that I don't, but I definitely do. The Congress voice is kind of a product of the LARPing part of the event and also kind of a product of the fact that the event goes on for 3 hours and you're expected to maintain certain levels of decorum. There are so many different factors that go into the Congress voice. We could do an entire podcast on just the Congress voice if we wanted to. But I think that the Congress voice exists because it's kind of a positive feedback loop, if you will. Everyone has seen the people who are better than them do the Congress voice, and then they just adopted the Congress voice because they think it's a big piece of doing well. And I think that standardized the event to an extent, which makes me kind of sad because I think when events get standardized, they lose parts of what make them appealing and good in the first place. But, no event's perfect. That's just a flaw for Congress.
Except for big questions. I think on this podcast, we think Big Questions is the best event.
Yes, we love Big Question. Also, NSDA, thank you for paying us to host Big Question tournaments. We really, really do appreciate that. But we promise you that has nothing to do with our enthusiasm for Big Questions. We
Definitely
just love the
not.
event.
Next episode, why Big Questions is the best. And everyone knows what Big Questions is, so I think that will definitely be a fire episode.
I mean, it's a big question. How could you not?
So, do you think big schools who have a lot of money, who have a lot of funding, and a lot of people have an advantage? Or is it up to individual skill?
So, this is a very, very divisive question in Congress and in debate as a whole, right? There are a lot of talks about if big schools have an advantage or not. Do schools with money have an advantage or not? I think that as a part of the event of Congress, big schools do not have a noticeable enough advantage to where it impacts the quality of competition. What I mean by that is this used to not be the case when preset docket didn't exist, when preset precedents didn't exist, because then big schools could kind of bully the chamber into adopting a certain docket, and then POs who tend to be from those bigger schools could also give favorable treatment to people from their school.
We saw that specifically with that one scandal of a TFA
Yeah, that
finals.
one TFA final round they had to rerun. Yeah, that was not amazing. But I think that with the advent of both of those two pieces of preset pieces in Congress, the advantage has diminished significantly. The only difference I think it makes, whether you come from a big school or small school, as it pertains to the actual event, is who gets elected PO. And I still think that has way more to do with how well connected you are as a competitor on the circuit. I just think that big schools tend to be more well connected. I don't think that just because you're from a big school, that means you can get PO. So as for the actual event of Congress, no. But there's so much that goes into the event of Congress, including private coaching. And I think that as far as the private coaching aspect of Congress goes, some of your bigger, wealthier schools do tend to have an advantage simply because a lot of your smaller schools can't afford that type of private coaching. And so I think that to an extent that does play a role in big schools having an advantage, but you can't really admonish big schools for trying to do their best to compete in the event, right? So I find it difficult to blame big schools for taking advantage of that opportunity.
What is one of your favorite memories from Congress?
So one of my favorite memories from Congress would probably have to be when we are sitting in Livernia finals. And this is my junior year. And
oh, I was there then. Oh my goodness.
And everybody wants to be done. And someone stands up and goes, because we're about to end the round, and someone stands up and goes, technically we haven't hit hard stop.
Oh no.
So we have to keep debating. And I think that everyone looked at that person, and I think that they realized their mistake, but it was too late at that point. They had to go call time, and they're like, yeah, you have to keep debating for like another 45 minutes. So we ended up getting out of that round at like 11:30 p.m., which was not great. But my favorite memory in Congress comes from talking to all of the people about that round and how terrible it was. So that was one of my favorite memories. Probably also tied for the Churchill tournament my senior year, the Churchill tournament this year, which had some very interesting decisions made all the way around, and that tournament was just really, really enjoyable for Congress.
Was it really though? Because I don't even know where to begin with that, because the prelims room of doom and despair. Oh my goodness, he wasn't even in that room. I was, and I'm sitting there, right? And no one's giving speeches. I'm trying to write a speech that I can give later in round. And the PO goes, do we have any sponsorships? And people look around and go, no. And this one guy in the back goes, well, if you give me 5 minutes, I can have a speech ready. And we all go, okay. The PO goes, indefinite recess. And then we just sit there for 30 minutes. And while this one dude just writes a speech, and it was like the most traumatizing experience of my life. He shrugged at that. Like, it doesn't really matter. Thanks for invalidating my trauma, Representative Juel.
I'm so sorry, Representative DeHart, that I've hurt your feelings.
I think that was sarcasm. Let me know what you think. What was the dumbest AGD you've ever heard?
So, the dumbest AGD that I have ever heard was probably, so I'm sitting in Bernie Champion prelims, right? Shout out to Bernie Champion, the Bernie Champion team. We love you guys.
I gotta get Representative Acosta or Lang on this podcast.
Yes, we need to get the Bernie team on this podcast.
All of them.
But my favorite, or probably least favorite AGD is probably when someone stood up in my prelims room and gave a skibbity toilet AGD. Which it felt like at that point that quitting Congress might be the best decision I could make in that moment.
Your senior year, just quit right there.
I mean, I probably have never been closer to quitting Congress than when I was probably like 2-ish hours into the round. Everyone's ready to be done, and this guy stands up and just starts giving a skibbity toilet speech, and I mean, it definitely made me more aware in the round, but not in a good way.
Not in a good way. On that same like vein of questions, on that same like idea, what was your favorite piece of legislation and what was your least favorite piece of legislation?
So, my favorite piece of legislation was probably a resolution to remove conditional lending for the IMF. I thought that that piece of legislation, which full disclosure was written by our school, but it was not written by me. It was actually written by another person on the team. But I think that that piece of legislation in particular had a lot of really, really good debate, and it hit on a lot of really, really important topics. And so I really, really enjoyed debating that piece of legislation. It also had some economics in them, which I'm an economics fan, so
So you're not telling me that your favorite bill was the Oasis 2 Act
um
or the
that
Oasis 1 Act? Do you think we're getting an Oasis 3?
so whoever keeps writing the Oasis Act, please stop. Please. I am just asking you from the bottom of my heart, not even as a competitor at this point, but as someone who is going to be judging on the circuit after this, please do not make me deal with Oasis Act 3.0. Please.
So,
But as far as my least favorite piece of legislation, it might just be the Oasis Act too. I'm not gonna lie, and that is because my early on in Congress we had Oasis Act 1 for me, and that was fine, right? Oasis Act 1, not a particularly
no, that one was
that one was solar power.
solar power. Pivot.
Not a bill that I was a huge fan of, but also a relatively inoffensive bill, right? Like it was all right. And then Oasis Act 2 came. And this is after the environmental type of bill has already been done so much, which it is an important issue, but at this point I feel like it needs to be addressed in more unique ways. Like writing the 1000
Good job right there. I love that.
writing the 1000th bill about solar power or about hydroelectric power is not going to draw attention to the issue in the way that you want. Please start coming up with more unique ideas in that regard. And so when I had to deal with the Oasis Act 2, which is after the same idea has already been done to death in so many other bills, I just looked at that and went, wow, I'm going to have to debate this. And this entire round is going to feel like rehash because I guarantee you we've had this exact same debate on a different item. And so that might just be my least favorite bill because it's emblematic of all of the things that I think are issues in Congress.
D1 Oasis Act hater.
D1 Oasis Act 2 hater.
Oh, okay. Nice for that clarification. Closing out today, how do you think debate has shaped you as a person?
Debate for me, and I've said this multiple different times, this is not a piece of advice that I found on my own. This is something that I found talking to other people on the circuit. Debate is an event where different people want different things out of the event. Some people are in this to be, national contenders, be on the national circuit, fighting to be the best of the best, and that is completely fine. It's actually very admirable. But there are also some people in this event that are just content to compete at locals, and that's a spectrum. There are people all in between the people who are just content to compete at locals and the people who want to be national contenders. And I think that what this event has done for me is really helped me understand that just because two people are doing the same thing doesn't mean they have the same goal.
Yeah.
And I think you see that in round and also how people treat the event as a whole. And so I think that event has really done for me, helped me to understand the differences between what people want out of the event and the fact that all of those opinions are valid. It just depends on what you value, on what you want out of the event. And I think we see that in the arguments in the event and how people treat the event, in their day-to-day lives, like outside of round. And I think that perspective has been the biggest thing that I have taken away from debate as valuable to me.
So, if you could say one thing to your novice self, what would you say?
Stop rehashing. That's what I would tell myself my sophomore year of high school when I started doing Congress. It's a trap that I think all early congressional debaters fall into, but I think that early on for me in Congress, I did it particularly bad. I had this funny idea that late round speeches were meant to be summarizing the debate, which is partially true. But by summarizing the debate, they do not mean just restating what everyone else has said and just leaving it at that.
Yeah.
That is not the entire purpose of late round speeches. And I think early debate me missed that, and I think that created some pretty big issues.
Well, thank you so much for Representative Juel for being on Coffee and Congress. Unfortunately, our questioning period has elapsed. Anything you want to leave our listeners with?
Please follow the Coffee and Congress podcast on Spotify.
And on Instagram at coffee_and_Congress.
And maybe you will see me judging some rounds in the future. I hope to continue being active on the circuit. And I'm really looking forward to who else gets to be on the podcast.
Yeah, and that is a wrap on today's episode. Huge thanks to all one of you who made it through 20 minutes of this. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to, like Representative Juel said, follow us everywhere. Or, just share this episode with one of your Congress friends while you procrastinate prepping. I hope y'all know that's the only reason you're getting new episodes, because I don't want to prep for NSDA, and I don't think Representative Juel wants to either. Regardless, I will see you next time on Coffee and Congress, where debate never sleeps, but neither do we. Do you think big school... For those who none of you have visual, but he just looked at me with I can't even describe the face. It was something interesting.